Okay. Good evening and welcome to Health and Ed Committee meeting for the month of November 2010. Welcome everyone. We have many guests today and welcome to all of you. I need a motion on the approval of the minutes and a second, please.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition? No. The mayor has advised me to advise you that the community care report is in order and we're in good shape and no approval will be necessary. So we will move on. Ms. Garrett is here with the health department report and she has passed out a handout to you as she always does. Ms. Garrett, thank you for being here and an excellent job in front of the commission the other night. I know all of us appreciated it. Thank you.
Well, thank you. So I've given you all a copy of the monthly report. This is October encounters, both patient encounters and environmental health encounters. And it shows you just a comparison of the month October 09 and October 10. And you can see we're still having huge increases in our what we call primary care services, women's health, men's health, well child exams. We also are seeing a large increase in both sites with our WIC, the Women, Infant, and Children program. We have seen a few less immunizations and for this time of the year, and I think it's because flu shots are readily available all across the county. And so, you know, they're at their grocery store when they're there shopping, they go ahead and get their flu shot. So that number's down a little bit. But we still are offering flu shots. Mondays and Thursdays are our walk-in days, no appointment needed. And we do that from 8 to 9 and 3 to 4 p.m. on those days, Mondays and Thursdays. And so that's my report. Do you have any questions?
I have a question about
Yes.
the report.
Absolutely.
I had a chance to attend a legislative review that the chamber put on, and Senator Ketron was talking about one of the bills that he's planning on, you know, drafting and trying to put into motion has to do with moving some funds from TennCare and reallocating it towards the health departments in the counties, so that you would kind of be that first line of defense of primary care instead of an emergency room. Have you all been involved in that dialogue? Are you participating in that discussion at all?
No, probably that would be happening with our Commissioner of Health.
Okay.
At the state level. And then that would be decided. We're very centralized units here, not independent county health departments. We're centralized under the state.
Okay.
So I would imagine that our commissioner is involved in those discussions.
Okay. Because just as I think about that, I could imagine that could be overwhelming to a small local facility.
Yeah.
And
well, we have been a safety net since TennCare was cut back.
Okay.
And so we've been providing primary care, whereas a lot of local health departments do not.
Okay.
So we've been used to doing that and have been doing it and continue to see an increase in those numbers.
Okay. So it might not be as big a change for you as it might be some others.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think we'd be prepared if they gave us some more money for staff and that. So.
Okay. Thanks.
Any other questions or comments?
Just real quick, I'm curious
Absolutely.
on the dental section for the dental program. It jumped from 6 in 09 to 105 in October 2010. The year to date was 361. Was there anything that happened that a third of that?
Well, it's difficult for us to recruit and keep dentists. You know, it's not the best paying dental job out there, so it's hard for us to keep. So there was a time where we went almost a year without a dentist, trying to recruit and get a dentist on board. So that's what shows that. That's a good question.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And so with those being zeros in Smyrna, you just don't have one at both locations?
That's correct.
Okay.
Right. They're about 15 miles apart, so we just keep the dental at the Murfreesboro site. It's bigger, has the rooms and everything.
Okay.
Any other comments? Questions? If not, entertain a motion to approve the report in a second, please.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? No. Ms. Garrett, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Special projects, we have a special person, as we always do, but a different special person. Ms. Nolan?
together.
This report, and excuse me, Ms. Nolan, just so that the public knows, the school building program and status report, and et cetera, the special projects, we were always mail that in advance of all our meetings, and we all have seen this material.
Okay. You've got new commissioners on board here. And I'd kind of like to, if you don't mind, just kind of go over, be a refresher for the old ones and just good stuff for the new ones. As far as how your information to you flows, at your commission meeting, in your packet, you'll always have a packet of information that tells you where our cash balances are, and that's kind of what this looks at, the front page of it, and that's the cash balances, where all the cash is in the county. What you, being on this board, would be interested in is anything that starts with 189. This is the cash that is in there in the projects that are currently being worked on, okay? So when you see these balances, that doesn't necessarily mean, oh, we can spend that for something else. There typically are purchase orders or obligations of that money. And I'm kind of backing up a step. You would have seen this at the November meeting. Now, prior to that meeting, we had budget. And I just attached our budget minutes, which was a reflection of what was the last thing that came from this committee, and that was moving money around. Moving money from projects to other projects, or moving money within projects. So what I did on your front page, just to kind of indicate what you will see, next month, that we took $933,543 out of the Browns Chapel, and we took $132 out of the repairs, $934, and we moved money into the $861 to that future high school and to a new elementary school of a $1,066,000. So you'll see that the next time you come to the December meeting, see those projects moved. Okay, so now here we are, and we come to this meeting, and we take all those adjustments. We wait till the commission makes those changes, or budget makes those changes. You have some things that don't go to commission. Typically, when money goes from project to project, or within projects, it doesn't have to go to the full commission. From project to project, we typically do take that to full commission, which is what we did, establishing.
You might point out that we have not approved an elementary school.
We have not approved.
This is bookkeeping for the sheriff county.
Actually, it's money that it was not used for Browns Chapel.
It came from an elementary school,
came
so
from
we're
an
keeping
elementary,
it in that
and
classification.
And you will see later when we talk about this, the projections, why this is vitally important, why we keep these monies separate. So no, it just says new. It is just a storage bank. It just says new. It's money to be used, and it's bond money, so you can't use that money for operating expenses. Right. It's got to be used in the capital projects, or we use that money and pay back for debt. That's the only two purposes for that money, and we are very careful about not letting it get spent for any other purpose. Okay, so all that till we get to the meeting tonight. So from your last meeting, I just want to show you that's how the information flows to where you get this report. And when you get these, if I were you, what I would be looking for and be asking either Teresa or me questions is when on this page 2, there's something that stands out to me, amount unobligated. Things with negative numbers, brackets around, you ought to question. There's sometimes you'll have it and you may not need to question because you'll understand, but if bottom line numbers have negatives, that's when you'll start asking the questions. On this page you see that we have the sensor lighting project where we have over obligated. We really didn't. In talking to Jeff, there's a $700,000 grant that we have not posted to the project, so that will wipe out that negative. But it is a question. It would be one that you'd say, why are we having this negative? Moving on to page, let's go to page 4.
And the column that what we try to keep up with is the original budget, which is pretty much what the school board says, and this is what you approve for a school. And they said, but things change. It sometimes goes up and sometimes it goes down. But at least we try to say what was brought to you initially, so you can always go back and see, well, something screwy happened. The amended budget, of course, is any of those amendments that come before you from the school board, whether it's within the project or from project to project. Now, what I was telling you, okay, the contracts to date, that column C is everything we paid out plus everything we're obligated to pay out. D is what we have actually written checks for. The BC, not obligated, when you're looking for money, look at that column, because that, when the school board is saying, well, we want this other project, you might come back to and say, well, what about this money that you haven't obligated, excuse me, in Oakland Middle School on that bottom, $484,694. But that school just opened. I mean, you just you'll get used to this as we move on. It's the first year. They will have obligations throughout this year, buying technology, just finishing out. But usually after the first year of school is completed, that project is really done. They typically bought everything that they're going to buy. That money is available. You see a difference between that $484 and $694 and the $739,036. That's telling you we've got that much in the bank. That much cash, but that much, the 484 is how much is available. That means the difference between those two is that we've got purchase orders, we've got obligations out there. What I was telling you on the negative, you see on this one the construction is over obligated by $55,000. It's just a little note in your head. It's like, okay, they've over obligated that, but there's sufficient funds they could move from other line items to cover that. It's only when that bottom line item, the bottom number gets in negative, that you really start getting concerned, or it's approaching. But they're going to watch that and make sure it doesn't. But from your perspective, those are the things that you're going to be looking at when you're looking at this report. Okay, page 5. We've got the Stewart's Creek High School project started and the new elementary. As I told you, you've made those movements, and you see those new projects now on this November report activity that you did in October. I want you to look at Stewart's Creek High School that says not expended $1,263,884. And I want you to jump to page 7. Page 7 lists all the sources of money that have come in that is funding projects. So this is, we keep up where all the money is coming from for each project where the money is being spent. So that bottom line funding source and then amended budget phase 5, that's comparing where all the money is coming from to what the budget is. And that bottom line number, you can see Stewart's Creek High School has a negative $1,299,000. That means we really don't have a funding source for that specifically. Now what we're doing, I'm going to jump into this page. This is where the cash is. You'll begin to see negative numbers as we start spending money for that high school. But there is cash in all of 189. We'll be using that money for that we're setting aside for that elementary school. We'll be using that up front. When we borrow money, we will borrow for that design money. And then the money for the elementary will be replenished. Okay? It's a lot of information real fast.
That's a lot of shells to follow.
It is, but that's why I was trying to go through this. So when you come to the commission, you look at this, you'll say, well, wait a minute, we moved that. Well, it's not going to show up until the following
Next month.
We've actually got $861 toward the high school's all
We
about.
really have 861.
To start.
And
That is the
you do
number,
see
that's
it,
how much.
and you see it as a source now
Yeah.
on that page, 861.
Almost there.
Almost there. Okay, so
Any,
that was,
any comment? I'm sorry, Ms. Nolan, go ahead.
I'm done.
Any comment on the special projects and also the very useful information? We have many questions for Ms. Nolan in a few moments. I'm sure she's going to stay right there, as a matter of
I
fact.
am.
Yeah, but any comments on the special projects report? If not, okay with the roll call here?
So you just need a motion.
Okay. I need a motion to approve that report, please.
So moved.
Commissioner Jordan and Commissioner Cook, thank you both. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? There's none. Thank you, Ms. Nolan. Just stay right where you are, I guess. We have no school board amendments tonight. Mr. Gill has had left shoulder surgery. I think it's throwing too many fastballs as a youth, but we don't really know exactly what caused that. But at any rate, he's not with us this evening, but we have numerous people here. Mr. Morgan is with us, Mr. Sandvik. Mr. Sandvik, I guess you want to come on up and maybe Mr. Clardy, is that okay? We have Chairman Burns also with us tonight, and Chairman Burns, always nice to see you. And Mr. Odom is here, instruction leader. And any of you are welcome to join us. Our purpose generally tonight, and I'm not sure where we exactly need to start, but I suggest we probably need to start with Ms. Nolan, if that's okay. We were, all members received a packet by way of explanation this week, courtesy of Mr. Gill and Mr. Clardy, and Mr. Clardy evidently has an extra one there.
You got one?
Is there another one anywhere?
There it is.
If this is it, I've got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I bought it in the house.
That's one for us.
Thank you.
Mr. Jordan, I think you'll find one in your front door if you, at your house.
Well, that's, wait a minute.
Delivered last night, Will.
No, it's here then.
Afternoon.
It's right here.
Here you
That's
go.
what it is, yep. What I left in
From
it.
Courier.
Yeah,
You found it?
just barely, yeah.
Okay, I think we're in pretty good shape. What Mr. Clardy was kind enough to send out was what we requested. And it is a 5-year plan, and maybe we better let Mr. Clardy explain exactly
That's what I
what
was
he's
getting ready to
seeing.
say, because
So the
my
public
work,
knows.
my work is then based
Yes.
on what the school board has done.
I think everybody at the table but me realizes that. So, Mr. Clardy, if you would, just tell us what you sent us, and the public certainly needs to know as well.
Okay, the school board, Mr. Gill had asked us to put together a 5-year building plan for the commission and the subcommittees of the commission. So we put a plan together at the last school board meeting. The school board went through it and made a few minor changes to the plan and then passed it last Thursday night. And Mr. Sandvig and I were off on Friday, so we didn't get those out until Monday. So that's the reason they were delivered to your house. You want me to just go through this and go ahead and cover it?
Yes, sir, with the immediate needs first, of course, please.
If you look on the 5-year building plan and start at 2011, the campus school renovation will have $422,000 in there for that, and that is the balance of all the projects that will satisfy the agreement with MTSU. We put the bleachers in for Laverne High School and Smyrna High School, and we had those down in another year, and the school board thought that it was important enough to move it up to try to get it in by next fall. And those projects are about $500,000 apiece, with bleachers on the visitor side. Now, I know Smyrna really had problems last week with the football game, dealing with all the crowd. And I think the stadium seat 3,500 with the visitor section, and possibly 6,000 or 7,000 people were there. So it's pretty challenging.
I actually took pictures. I meant to bring them tonight, but they're on my Facebook page if anybody's interested in seeing them. There's a section where you see the crowd and you're looking up towards the press box. You see a sea of people. There's supposed to be steps there.
Right.
They turned the steps into seats. So.
Yeah.
The radio crew that I'm pretty close with tell me that they stopped all traffic entering the campus about 40 minutes before game time because there was just no other, there was no place to go.
Right.
So, I mean, and it is, I'm not campaigning for this or against it, but clearly we have some security and safety issues there, I think, that y'all are trying to address.
I'll
Go ahead,
campaign for it, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Mr. Clark.
And I believe
That was just a playoff game, though, right? It's not like that.
That is correct.
It's like that very often. We have one of the most competitive districts in the state. I mean, they call our little region the SEC of high school football. So it grows with intensity every game. And then, of course, the more high schools we build, the rivalry is going to build. So.
I'm not disagreeing with that, but it's not nowhere nearly that bad during the season, though, right?
Well, when we played Blackman, it was exactly that same way. At halftime, people were still trying to get in when we played Blackman the first time. So certain games it is. Yeah.
Both of you are right. What has happened is that all our teams are now in the same district, which gives you 2 or 3 home games that are really kind of that way, and then your playoff games, and at any rate, that's what we're facing.
It used to be if you played a Coffee County or Franklin County or Lincoln County, they didn't bring that many people.
Right.
But when you're playing
Local teams.
Oakland, Riverdale, Blackman, or something like one of the other schools, but if they don't make the playoffs, there's 5 or 6 home games a year.
Yeah, 5, 6 would be a maximum.
So 6 would be a maximum. I don't mean to be a pessimist here, but I'm a little concerned about spending $1 million for 6 nights a year. We've got other classroom issues, more or less, but it's just me saying bad things out loud.
The seating, the bleachers, what's the difference between Laverne and Smyrna and, let's say, Riverdale and Oakland?
I can't, 1,000 maybe? Is that fair?
Yeah, probably.
Maybe 1,500?
Yeah, I think they have 1,500, and we probably have maybe 600 seats up at the other schools.
Come about on one side. Now, I think there's, gosh, I'd hate to, I think it's about maybe 1,500 difference between, say, Laverne and Riverdale or Oakland, but I'm a little shaky on that figure.
And one of the problems with Laverne and Smyrna is that when the other team brings the band in, it fills almost up half of the bleachers on the visitor's side.
And if they got there later than 40 minutes early, they couldn't get in? Right? They had to turn them away?
Well, they did this past game, which is the only one that I can speak to.
Right.
This past year, yes.
What if the other team got there 40 minutes? Would we turn them away and it'd be?
My suggestion to Smyrna was that they fill up every seat at 5 o'clock, and that they would have.
I was in mine at 5 o'clock too.
When they play Brentwood, not Blackwood, when they play Brentwood, but I don't know what they did. Go ahead, Mr. Clardy, I'm sorry.
Would it be an option, like in a playoff situation like we had, to go back to MTSU? We could, save, I don't know, millions of dollars. But is that an option? I'm just asking.
Safety reasons? I mean,
That's something that we could take to the board to consider. And this is the main thing that the board is concerned about is the security and safety, because it gets very volatile in there at times. And the restrooms are all on the home side. And so all the visitors have to go all the way around through the sea of people to even get to the restroom on the other side, with the exception of a few porta potties. So it's a pretty scary situation sometimes, and we're just trying to cut that off on the risk and liability of that. And
So the bleachers are more than bleachers, it might be restrooms, is that what you're saying?
yes, there's restrooms in both of those. If you recall, the newer schools, high schools, have a restroom and concession stand that's at the center of the field on the at the end zone. And so it services both sides, and it kind of keeps the thing divided out. But up there, and the same way at Smyrna, they have to go all the way to the other side and mingle a lot more. So it's tough. Move on to the McFadden renovation. There's still some things that we need to do over there. You know, we did several things this past summer and barely got them finished, but there's some paving and some other issues that we want to go ahead and wrap up this following next summer. And then major capital repairs. Those are our roof repairs, various special projects that come up. Sometimes we get some paving in there. We get our window replacement in there, some HVAC replacement, and those types of things in that.
On a whole, how is our roofs on the schools?
Our roofs are excellent. With all the rain we had, I had 3 leaks today, this morning, when I got there. And we addressed those immediately. So the money that the commission has put into this capital improvements has paid off big time. Just like this year, also along with the roof, we've replaced Laverne High School's heating and air conditioning units in one wing, goes through the wall unit. Oakland and Riverdale's annex units were replaced this year. So we always have a list, and we always try to prioritize that list and take care of that stuff out of that money, and we've made a lot of progress over the last several years. The David Urey renovation comes in 2012. And there's a big need up there because of the security. The office is so far from the front door. Even though we have the security at the front door where you have to punch a button and request permission to get in, it's still all the way across the cafeteria to that. So we're interested, and the staff up there is interested in moving the offices out to the front so that they'll kind of be isolated out on that front end, so that you don't have access to the rest of the school. Once you're in, you have to come through the office to actually get in school. And there's a big need there for that. And then, of course, the major capital repairs, Fund 177. And then we moved down to year 2013, and there's been a lot of discussion about Stewart's Creek High School. And the design fee has been approved at the commission level. So we will be needing to, in the spring, to figure out where the balance of that money is coming from at the commission level. Then Eagleville High Addition, Phase 1, we came over, the school board did last year at the commission, and I believe a commitment was made at that time to fund that first phase when the high school came up. So the board moved that in to year 13.
Can I ask you, what does the Phase 1 include?
Phase 1 is the auditorium over by the new gym, chorus room, a band room, cafeteria renovation, and I believe there's 12 or 14 classrooms also in that section. They're Eagleville has a very difficult time in feeding their students now. They have to start so early. The cafeteria is very small. The renovation includes removing the existing stage that's in there and expanding the cafeteria into that area, so they don't have to start so early in the morning feeding for lunch. Smyrna Primary renovation. Smyrna Primary is one of the few schools that has not had major renovations on it with a lot of the other renovations that we've done, and they're in dire need of more room in their media center. So we have looked at expanding that out for them and then doing a general facelift on the interior of the building.
So there's no need for adding classrooms, that's just
Right.
updating the facility.
Right. It's media.
Well, and one of the things that Dr. Bullen pushed a few years back and we've been doing is, as we've been building new elementaries, twinning, renovating one of the existing facilities. So on these two, since we're not building elementaries right now, using part of that Fund 177 money, which is from the property tax, to finish that part of that project, and probably got some other schools we'll be able to move forward on in a year or two.
But it's not showing it. So this Smyrna Primary renovation is coming from 177. It's not showing that here.
It's 750.
Major capital projects.
Yeah,
is
I'm
that
sorry, I didn't put
Okay.
Fund 177
Okay, so
on
it's,
it.
And then we move into year 2014, and we've evaluated this, and we know there's going to be a need for an elementary school in Laverne and Smyrna area. And then in August of 2014, Eagleville High addition, and that's the balance of those classrooms down on the east side of the building, which include 14 classrooms. Also, we would put a basement in under that building part to be turned over to the athletics for new locker rooms and things out close that would put those folks right out towards the football field there.
So they're going to end up with almost 28 classrooms total? You said 12 to 14 and
Yes.
then another 14?
Yeah.
Okay.
What will it change the core from to at Eagleville? Would that addition change it from what to what?
Well, the cafeteria enlargement, that would be the core. So I'm really not sure exactly what it would increase the core. Right now, they have 14 portables. So this would basically be moving a lot of those children that are in the portables into classrooms now. And the core would be expanded somewhat with the cafeteria. I'm not sure exactly what the number of that would be.
will we lose some existing classroom space to the expansion of the cafeteria or something?
No.
So these are 28 additional classrooms minus 14 portables is netting, say, 14 new classrooms?
That's correct. And that's why the first edition will get them a auditorium. They've been going out of school to do their plays and things right now over to the middle school, and it would get those children that are in portables inside the building right now.
What's the core right now? Anybody know?
I didn't bring it with me, but I don't even know how many children are there now. Do you, Jess?
Just under 700.
The capacity is 830.
Capacity
How many are
830.
actually enrolled?
I'm sorry, 880. And there are around 727. That's total of all grades.
They're that much below capacity, yet they're utilizing 14 portables now?
That's correct.
Their brick and mortar capacity is 580. So that
includes the
that first
portable.
number included the
You can usually take about 80% of what the school was built for and use that as your capacity figure. Because that's the way the makeup classes and those kinds of things.
So I'm not sure I added all that together. What's the capacity of the school?
The brick and mortar capacity is 580 students.
And how many's there now?
757.
Thank you.
Mr. Clardy, correct me if I'm wrong in any part of this here. The phase one, besides the auditorium and the cafeteria, classrooms is what I'm really concerned about. Those classrooms eliminate, hopefully, the portables.
That's correct.
All right? Now, the phase two, if they continue to grow, and if they get sewer, that's something that can be decided at a later time.
Right.
And I want to also make certain, and I want to be corrected if I'm wrong, but the athletic director told me that this was correct, that a very small amount of work is going to be done here in the athletic area. As a matter of fact, almost nothing. We're going to turn that over to the Booster Club, and the community is going to finish that, not the Rutherford County taxpayers. I just want to make sure that's clear. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
There would just be a shell in the basement of that building. We think that is the cheapest money that we can spend because of the fall on the property out there behind the school. You can put a basement in under that for very little cost.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Where would the portables, once those students move, would they be put back into an inventory? Is there already plans, potential plans of where those portables would go after this construction?
We would, there are several places, we haven't looked at that specifically, but we always have places that
They're spoken for without being
Right.
spoken for yet.
for instance, every year we get probably a request from principals for maybe 3 to 4 times the amount of portables that we actually supply. In other words, they might put a teacher on a cart and have her to use multiple places in the building.
Right.
Instead of us moving a portable in. So we look at that with Mr. Odom and Mr. Gill, before school's out and try to anticipate what we need so we can move them during the
How much
summer.
was the cost? There's a significant cost involved in moving those portables. What?
Portables, to move them are around $15,000.
That's just one.
That's one. And that means breaking them down, moving them, hooking up electricity, putting intercom and fire alarms, internet into them, and then building all the decks and things back that it takes for special needs access.
Mr. Clardy, Chairman mentioned the sewers at Eagleville, and I know it's a major concern. There are problems with the septic systems all throughout Eagleville there after some grant money and different things, looking at options. Does anybody have any idea how far we are from having an answer to this? Because before we spend $7 or $8 million on the school, we have an uncertain disposal system. I would want to make sure that was, and we're not making that decision tonight anyway, but I was hoping somebody's researching where they are with that, and if there is a sewer system coming in the near future.
I can give you my take on it. We have our own plant there, and we have a permit to release liquids into the stream there that's very close to the school. We can use that system because it's not at capacity right at this time at the school. So the additions won't affect us as far as sewer because we think our sewer will handle it. We're not releasing as much liquids into the stream as we could release, so we're not at capacity. Now, we have unofficially committed to the city out there that if they get the sewer system and raise the money for it, they will need our permit. In other words, the state environmental people are not going to give them another permit. So we would transfer our permit over to them so they could operate and release into the stream. And the system they're designing is, it will work for the entire city. So we can handle the sewer through this addition and the extra bathrooms and the extra load of folks on it through the system we have now.
Mr. Clardy is exactly right about all of this. The real question is this: without sewer, there won't be any growth in Eagleville. For all practical purposes, they cannot grow. So it's going to make it really difficult for the school to grow without this sewer situation being resolved. They are a long, long, long ways from getting the money together to build this system that they have that will work. And it will work if we allow them to use this permit, discharge permit that we have. But they're not even close at this point. They're working very, very hard, continue to. They've been working on this for years. But the only way they were going to cobble the money together before is a little proposal I made, which was going to require the county to even subsidize and put in a substantial amount of the dollars to get enough money together to make this work. They do not have enough customers to provide enough revenue to support the cost of this. So it's going to take grants and money from foundations. We'd already talked some about to the local foundation about this. So it's a real leap of faith to think that they're going to make this happen short term. I mean, even though they're not giving up on it yet.
Mayor Toon did tell me the other night, he was a terrific read to succeed person, by the way, at the spelling bee. He was hilarious. But he did tell us, told me that day that he was hoping to make an announcement next summer at the very earliest. And he said that was an optimistic view. So I think every person that ran, whether they won or lost, and of course Mayor Toon himself, were all working hard for the sewer situation. The mayor makes a great point, but the first edition, which would go with the high school, would take care of the portables and the children are there now. And then we're talking on the second phase being 4 years away from this past August. So it might be that the sewer plant may come to fruition by the time we get ready to build the second addition here. And are you saying there in another way that the fact that we add on 14 classrooms, or if that passes, that doesn't really increase the sewer usage?
No, and the growth would not affect that because we'll just be serving the kids that are there at that school and putting them in classrooms instead of portables. Yes, sir, that's one.
And it is wise for all of us to remember that if a youngster is properly zoned and comes to enroll at the proper school, he's going to or she's going to be enrolled at that school if it's the proper school, unless the school board deems to do otherwise, which they. In other words, they're making a difference if the sewer works or not. I mean, they're going to be there. So we need to make sure, I guess, it works, or they do.
Well, we have the ability to take care of it at this point.
Were there other? Did you go as far down the list? You have one or two more, didn't you?
We're into year 2015. That's an elementary in the west Murfreesboro, and also a Smyrna area middle school, and we're still studying this middle school. We felt like there were some indications that we would need that, and we wanted to go ahead and show it to make the commission aware of it. But, you know, 5 years is way out, so we have to look at that. And then the Siegel edition in August 15, and also the major capital repairs would just roll on down there also. And that's it.
I'll say one thing. If Eagleville ever gets sewer, you can just look at Laverne, what happened to Laverne when we got sewer. We bursted at the seams and you couldn't keep up. And we're landlocked. And that's exactly what's going to happen to Eagleville. So if it happens to get sewer next year, leave those 14 portables right where they are.
That Siegel High edition, what's that?
That is, I think it's 12 classrooms that were shown in the original plan as an addition that weren't built, and there's already a place there prepared for it and everything.
I have a question. I know we keep adding on to these schools, and I know that we don't want to get into the business of mega schools, so at what point will you tell us this is a final addition?
Well, I think you always have to leave your options open. I don't think you can say, I mean, if you get an influx, if the economy picks back up and things take back off and you start getting 7 or 8% growth, we may have to make some concessions.
Right.
So I don't think you can just say we'll never add on to this school again, to leave that option open so you can address the issue if it comes up.
I think we can have a general idea, though, of what an ideal scenario is, an ideal number of maximum students for each high school, and that's really what I want you to be offering up. I know real life interferes with ideal.
Well, the number that we use now is 2,000 for high school,
Okay.
1,000 for middle school, and 1,000 for the new elementary school. And once you start getting over those numbers, you end up with a totally different set of issues to deal with.
And so at Siegel High School, how many students do they have there now?
I think it's 1980 or something,
Right,
2,000 approximately.
And so adding these 12 classrooms, will it get you to what?
That'll be 360 possibility. But one thing you have to consider is we have probably 6 or 8 portables out there now. So it'll get those children back inside the building.
Okay.
And then that would leave you a few seats to deal with growth with.
As Gary kind of alluded to, that building was designed
For additions.
for this specific addition.
Okay.
It was the core
Yeah.
of the building is set up for that, for feeding and media center
Yeah.
and all of those.
Okay.
Figuring you would need it at some point.
Okay.
Gary,
Yes,
what
ma'am.
is your special program school?
I can answer that.
Next page.
The special program school was basically just an overall fit for anything that met from alternative school to K through 12 to magnet school. It just highlights that as a school that
Can take care of
can
it.
take care of all kinds of needs. And basically, those schools generally have except for Eagleville, they have a maximum that they're going to take. For example, the magnet schools are an application-based school, so they only take a certain amount of students. So that was the need for calling your attention to it that way.
I want to interject something really as a follow-up to Commissioner Allen was speaking to just a moment ago. The TWSAA requires every school that's a member of TWSAA, and that's almost all of them, to file their enrollment every year to determine what level of athletics they're going to play, whether it's 6A like Riverdale or 1A like Eagleville or all those things in between. If they are, shall we say, not truthful with those numbers, the penalties are severe, very severe. So they are truthful. Of the top 15 high schools in the state of Tennessee, Clarksville, Nashville, Chattanooga, Knoxville, Memphis, combined have 5 of the top 15. Of the remaining 10, Rutherford County has 4, all by our lonesome. And likely heading toward 5, if something doesn't give somewhere, we have a massive rezoning, which is, I don't think, coming. So I know that other schools, McGavock being one of those in Nashville, that is Antioch being the other, tried an enrollment of I think they got near 4,000 on one occasion in one year or two, and had actually 4 high schools under one roof with 4 principals, 4 sets of assistant principals. It didn't work. It just didn't work. And so they've dropped back now to a reasonable number, about like Siegel. I think they're the largest high school in the state. I believe McGavock is this year. Bradley Central has been, Hendersonville has been. But at any rate, I thought I'd just throw that out there. The Antioch figure, by the way, is 1 year old. So there you go.
Just another quick comment. The school board doesn't take their responsibility lightly, and that's the responsibility of educating the children and also keeping an eye on the dollars that are spent over here. We have one of the lowest, student money ratios in the state for a student. So the school board, Mr. Gill, and the staff are all aware of what it takes to get the job done and get it done right. And they and we believe that this plan is reasonable without, it's not a shoot the moon wish list or anything. It's something that is very reasonable to request, and we think it's needed. We still have 130 portables, 135 portables in the system, and we've made a excellent stride over the last 10 years in trying to address a lot of the issues and the space that the system has had. And we think that this plan continues to help that situation out. If you give up and don't continue to make progress, then you just backslide. So you end up with the same set of problems that you had 10 years ago if you let it slide too far. So we believe this plan's reasonable, and it's what the children needs, and it's what we need to continue to do a job and improve the job that we're doing for the students and the taxpayers.
What's that bottom line total?
The 150 range, isn't it?
I think it's about 152 or something like that.
Okay. I thought it was 157. My math is not good.
Mr. Sandvik, do you have any addendum here?
Well, I did an update on what we presented in late September, early October to the Budget Committee, which y'all got a copy of. I've got 2 more months of data in there if you'd like me to go over that. It's entirely up to y'all.
2 months of data in what?
I've added 2 months of sales tax data.
Okay.
Again, showing improvements. So.
Do you have any questions for Mr. Sandvik or Mr. Clardy before Ms. Nolan tells us how we're going to pay for all this?
We're going to get into all the information that you put out. There's a dozen pages or so behind the cover sheet. Are we going to talk any about that?
If you'd like to, we can get Mr. Morgan up and have him go through some of that with you.
Well, the information was sent to us, okay, and I'm not sure I have a stranglehold on what it all means, because I'm assuming that this is, Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry.
Yes, no, sir.
I'm assuming that this is support information for this up here, correct?
It is. It's the numbers that where we've gotten the growth from and the way we've dispersed the growth throughout the numbers.
And I just had today, for an hour or so, I just tried to look at it and develop some understanding, and I just have a couple of questions, if now's the proper time, if it's not, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. No, absolutely. Morgan's right here.
On page 1, the 5-year average is, you're saying almost 3% growth on the K through 5, but really the last 3 years it's been less than 2%.
Yes, sir.
So you're projecting something that's a little different than what the trend is showing, correct?
One thing to remember in that is the last 3 years has also been a downtrend in our economy.
I understand that.
But over the course of that, that's where you get your average. And as you can see, in 2005, or between 2005 to 2007, our economy was doing great.
Right.
I could have averaged this out further, but I felt like this was enough, 6 years was enough of a trend to give you an idea that we are still growing and growing at a pretty good clip.
So you're using, in essence, 3% as the growth rate?
Yes, sir.
And the last 3 years, it's been less than 2%? The answer is yes, correct?
That's fair to say.
Okay. And then, I think it's on page 3, I was struggling with what all the little diamonds and the little circles and the reds and all of those kinds of things were, but just a couple of things that I've kind of maybe had some questions on that I'm not real sure I can articulate it the way that it needs to be, but we're saying that I think we need a new school in 2013, is it? A new a new elementary school or a primary school or something like that in 2013, is that correct?
Actually, let's see, that was changed a little bit.
In 2014.
2014.
Okay.
And Laverne is the first line, Laverne or Smyrna Area Elementary.
Okay. So we're actually would be looking to maybe approve that school year after next, something like that, based upon these stats, this data.
Yes, sir.
That we've collected.
If you'll notice at the bottom of page 3, where the 669 is highlighted, it's literally because in that, and the reason these are grouped together like this is basically to give you an idea. Smyrna Laverne is a large geographic area, and the Blackman area is another large growing geographic area. So we have to consider them kind of as a whole when we're planning for a new school.
Okay.
And if you look at that area altogether, and outside of portables and everything, if you just look at our brick and mortar capacity compared to the number of students that we could foreseeably project into that little box, you have a deficit of almost 670 students without a space to sit in.
That's on the northern end of the county that you're
That would be on
talking
the
about.
northern end of the county.
But if you look at over on the left side of this currently, you're talking about Laverne. It looks like with 144 under capacity, Lakewood 146, Stewart's Creek 251
Yes, sir.
under
And you're
capacity.
I understand that, but you're also looking at that areas that have a particular zone right now. If we were to try to get this in line without building a facility to match that, we would have to, as Mr. Jordan said, we would have to undergo massive reconstruction of our zoning to meet that need.
Well, I'm just trying to understand you guys, okay?
Oh, sure.
I'm not trying to be argumentative, I'm just trying to understand. We've got capacity, and don't have enough seats. And some of this, in my, I was educated at Laverne Elementary School when they had no kindergarten. It was just a 1 through 8 school and 4 classrooms, okay?
Sure.
It was pretty simple back in those days, and I just can't, to me, simple math just doesn't make a lot of sense. It appears that also over there, under the capacity, and over on the right-hand side of that, there's this capacity at 850, 850, 850, 850, and I just remember a couple of years ago, the communication with us was that the capacity was 1,000, and now all of a sudden it's 850. So
Well,
once again, I'm struggling to keep all of this.
The
in
newer
line.
schools are 1,000, but some of the newer, older schools were 850, and they changed to 1,000 to accommodate more children in those schools. Now, Las Casas and Rockville had additions to bring them on up right after the schools were built, and within a couple of years.
Well, and Jeff, the other thing that happened, when you look at the newer K-8 schools, when they were K-8, 6th, 7th, and 8th, we'd have 30-to-1. When they dropped to K-5, those old classrooms that had 30 could only have 20 or 25. So that dropped the capacity because we couldn't put as many kids in each classroom
And
for the old K-8s.
I thought you made an excellent point a while ago, Mr. Phillips, that we won't have to start that school for a couple of years. And was a trend, if there was a trend that we could see that would continue to be dropping, and which I don't think anyone in the county hopes that it does start dropping because of the economical situation, but the school board looks at this at least once or twice every year and reevaluates this plan. And, we're working on the best information that we have today.
Okay, I'm just struggling to figure a couple of things out. Like, there were 3 or 4 schools in there that the capacity you've listed here is 850, and a couple of years ago they were listed at 1,000. Jeff kind of explained that, I believe. Browns Chapel, is there seats available at Browns Chapel?
There are, sir.
Okay. And is that all kind of figured in, I guess, with still the expansion of that end of the county?
Yes, sir, but you have to remember where that school sits and where that zone resides. There's a less dense population right there at the school. Your growth is happening north of there. Really, your growth in that area, that Smyrna-Laverne areas, is happening right around Sam Ridley Parkway on either side. That's where our densest infrastructure is, and that's what we're looking at when we look at a large geographic area that can handle so many students, is where are the densest areas at? And what's the shortest time to get that student there, and many other factors.
I'm not disagreeing with any of that.
Oh, I understand.
Just from a taxpayer perspective,
Sure.
okay? And I'm one, and I hope you guys are one too. But from a taxpayer perspective, it looks like, if you look at capacity versus what we're building, it doesn't add up. So what you're actually saying is that there are some schools that are going to be below capacity, and we still need to build a school because there are some that are over capacity, and there's no way to rezone those schools. Is that what you're saying?
Basically, there's no way to get the children where they're needed over to the school that has the capacity without busing them, and keeping them on the bus for long.
So that kind of explains the southern end of the county, where the schools that we built are, a while back, the schools that we built, the elementary schools that we built are, in essence, in my mind, I don't mean to say way under capacity, but underutilized.
Like Kittrell, for instance, maybe, or?
Kittrell and,
Wilson, Walter Hill, Las
yeah,
Casas.
thank you.
Yeah.
Those. See, my concern, or my questions, all deal with that. We have schools that we have to pay these operating costs for every year, and they're underutilized. And now we're looking to continue to build schools and add more operating costs to the county budget because they're needed in a particular area, and we can't rezone. We can't move those kids around. That's what you're saying pretty much. We can't do that, right?
Right.
Not effectively.
We have a little bit of flexibility in, at borders and things, the main highways.
Well, once again, I was looking at this in mind. I've asked a couple of questions and tried to get some other input, and I'm just not real sure that I've grasped, I could grasp it, and you guys have done a good job of trying to explain it. But the last question that I had on page number 7 also dealt with Riverdale and Oakland, and the core capacity, or the capacity there that you listed at 2,000, and the last communication that I saw, the written thing that came out of you was 2,300. Of the additions that we had took that up to 2,300, and now you're listing it at 2,000. And I don't know how far we'd have to go back, but
I can try to pull those and take a look at them, but actually, as I say, a lot of the schools are, you can actually, what the design of the school was built for, you can almost take 80% of that. You can take, for instance, high schools at 80%, middle schools at 85%, and maybe 85 to 90% on elementary schools. And it's just, and depending on what kind of class makeup you have, and are offering at that school, you know, if the state says you can have 25 children in there, you may only actually have 19. So it's just a tough thing to get your finger on.
I'm understanding better. Okay, I am. But what the question was that the capacity was communicated recently. It could have been 2 years ago. To me, it's recently. At 2,300, and now it's 2,000. And it was the same question that I had with the 850 versus 1,000 in the elementary schools. So I once again this was delivered last night. I opened it this morning and asked a few questions, called a few folks, and to see if I could have a better understanding of it. But the thing that I continue to struggle with, okay, is that we've got capacity in our school system for elementary kids, I think, and we're building schools. And that's what a lot of taxpayers in Rutherford County are going to question us on. Not necessarily you guys, but are going to question us on. And I know the northern end of the county is where the needs are, and I know some of these things really have to happen. The bleachers was, you know, those things were really good explanations, and I think those things are needed. But the challenge for us, or at least the challenge for me, is that we have capacity within the system, and enough capacity in the system to offset the need for building a new school. But what I'll need to be able to explain to neighbors when they call is that the capacity is out of zone, and we're looking at the growth areas, and it's important that we continue to emphasize those growth areas, I guess. Did I kind of summarize that correctly?
I think you did. And for instance, say you have 200 seats over here, and you've got 200 children in portables over here. It's very difficult to take those 200 students in a portable, move them over there into those 200 seats over here in this other area because of zoning and the, you know, proximity of where the children live to that degree.
Mr. Clardy, don't take offense to this,
Oh,
okay? I don't. I mean it. But we made plans to build those schools, and it hadn't been all that long ago, and now they're underutilized, and we're having to build someplace else. Those are the challenges and the questions that we face as county commissioners because we fund your request. And those are the challenges that we face. You made the decision and recommended us to build a school here. Now that school's underutilized and we have to go down here. Hopefully, that's the reason I kind of brought this with me tonight, hopefully all the comprehensive plans and that we're putting together may give us a little bit of an opportunity to kind of correct some of those things over the next 20 years and allow us to plan better for some of this growth and be better prepared to take care of this. But once again, I don't want you to take offense to that, but you guys brought us a plan, a 5-year plan 15 years ago. We implemented that plan, And now that plan is undoubtedly hadn't worked out, because there are schools on that end of the county that's underutilized, and there are schools on this end of the county that still has seats, but we're still building on that end of the county. That's where I've struggled, and that's the reason I've asked all those questions, and you've done a yeoman's job in explaining them to me, and I appreciate that.
I think what Ms. Cook said earlier about Eagleville, I think exploding is probably a pretty good point to answer something about what you said. It's good preparation. Whether it happens or not, of course, that's really what we're guessing at. Do we not have schools now where if a student requests, even though they're not zoned there, they may go there and we will honor that?
If there's room, and the board's usually pretty sympathetic to, if there's room in the school, they will usually address it. If there's no room, then they will usually won't give an exemption.
Right, but I don't want to cause a zoning problem. I didn't mean it that way. I mean, I know Oakland was that way for a while. That if a student requested to go to Oakland, and hasn't Eagleville always been that way?
There's a dual zone area between Eagleville and Riverdale for the high school level.
Okay.
If Commissioner Phillips, if we just an old history on Wilson. One of the frustrations that we deal with there, and just in whole planning throughout the county, when we were looking for a site, that was one of the fast-growing areas at that point, and based on the approved sites and all, we thought we would be in much better shape. And then with some of the flooding issues that surfaced and some of those...
The landfill. It wound up not developing as projected. And then another area that a couple of years later, we were expecting Buchanan to totally take off. We didn't wind up building a school there until we did our middle school. But remember the discussions we had? Well, it may have been more at the board level, expecting it to take off there. Well, it wound up being several years later, and we were able to cover that through our middle school.
And, you know, I think just for instance, when you're issuing 200 or 300 building permits per month and you drop off to 20 or 30 or 15, that's the difference between the 2.5% and the 7% growth that you were seeing. So when some of those schools were planned, if the growth had continued in those areas like it had and had dropped off over the last 3 or 4 years, there'd be a lot more students in some of those schools also.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's the reason I was questioning the downward trend over the last 3 years versus the average that you guys were using. And I realistically don't expect that downward trend to continue either, but I have no basis other than just a guess.
Both principals at Stewart's Creek Elementary and Stewart's Creek Middle School told us last year of the number of lots that have been sold and were ready within just blocks of their already overcrowded schools. And I know you all look at that, do you not, all over the county? And there, I don't know how many, Mr. Jordan, perhaps you know the figure, but there are thousands of lots ready to go, already approved, isn't that correct?
Yeah, I mean, it's multiples of thousands. I'd be afraid to venture a number, but it's unbelievable. The approved lots within the city and the county.
Did you want to interject something here?
I might sort of make an editorial comment. I think what we have here is a reasonable projection of a 5-year plan. I think it's a work in process, you might say. Every year we're going to have to look at this, maybe twice a year, just as you said. And we're going to need to see what this growth, what happens over the next few years, and this will give us a much better approach. So we're not approving or disapproving 2 new elementary schools in the next 5 years. We're saying there is some probability we will need to look at that. And I think as time goes forward, we can have better information from which to make a good decision. So I don't think we're making any commitment to necessarily approve this plan, but it's their best effort to put forth a plan that sort of indicates what they think might happen. I agree with some of what Commissioner Phillips is saying in that we've got some schools in the Smyrna, North Rutherford County area particularly as he mentioned, Browns Chapel and Stewart's Creek and even Laverne Lake and Roy Waldron, that somehow they're close enough related that we need to do, I hope we'll continue to really do some serious thought about how we can use those seats that are there to maybe we still have to have a building at some point, but maybe it's a year, we put it to a year later or maybe 2 years later. So I think if they'll just continue to work with us and give us some real serious thought and maybe think out of the box on these vacant seats, we need to figure out a way to use those as effective as we can without disrupting the whole world. I understand that the struggle there, but I think we have a responsibility to do that to ourselves and to all of our citizens, and I believe that the school board will do that with us, and that's what we need to try to do.
Chairman Burns?
I just wanted to thank you, Mayor, for saying that. We were a little reluctant to even give a 5-year plan. And typically, over the last 5, 6 years, we've done 2 years, and even that can be a little iffy given the volatility. So we really did that in response to a request from the commission. We are at least 2 years away from asking for an elementary school. So, Commissioner, I appreciate all your comments. I don't want us to get distracted on that. I mean, from our perspective, the high school and the Eagleville project, those are really what's on our agenda right now and what we're asking you to consider. So, you know, the last couple of years of that plan, it's our best guess, but it's not a whole lot more than that right now.
I think what we were looking for, and I believe Commissioner Phillips, I believe, asked for this information, but others also asked in committee and in commission, that we wanted to know what was coming down the pike if we committed at some point to building some or all of these things here. When we get to 2013, 2012, 2013, 2014, what are we facing? And you all have admitted, and I think all of us understand that this is a guess. It is educated and it is careful and cautious and all that kind of stuff, but it is a guess. And I wouldn't want to argue with your guess. I do have one question I want to ask you this morning, and that is, let's just go back to page 1, okay? And I just want to ask you this one thing, because it applies to all these figures here. Let's just go with the top one, Barfield, okay? You've got 941, so they must have ended the school year at 941 back in May, I assume. Is that right?
Actually, these are first month totals.
Okay, so that's the first month in
each one of these.
In 2009, the 2009-2010 school year.
Yes, sir.
So that probably answers my next question. 960 was
just a few months back.
Just a few months back. So, okay, so and you were expecting on top of 960, 2% growth, 3% growth.
2.87 is what we're averaging.
All right. Okay. I want to make sure, like Commissioner Phillips, I want to make sure I was reading it correctly.
Yes.
Thank you.
Just a quick comment, that school that you're talking about at 960 has 2 portable classrooms right now.
Well, the only reason I picked it was first on the line. It didn't matter, but I just want to make sure that I knew where the 960 was.
And just finishing up this little discussion that dialogue that Jeff started, Mr. Clardy, we listed as a capacity 850. For that school, we think has 1,000, I believe. It has 960 with only 2 portables, but we have listed here only a capacity of 850. So we'd like for you sort of just to review these numbers and get them as consistent as you possibly can.
Okay, but just Linda said it. She requested more portables this year, but we didn't let her, so I'm sure she's got some people on carts and things too, but.
When you built the school, what was the capacity that we defined as we were building at that moment in time?
Yeah, it was 850, wasn't it?
Right.
Yeah. It has not been added on to. There's been no.
I have a couple questions. If we can only anticipate 80% capacity when we're talking about capacity numbers, should we be working with the 80% number? Like, instead of saying the capacity is 850, should we say it's 80% of 850?
On an elementary school, you can be at, 90%.
I'm just asking because I just want to have a realistic picture of what's going on in these schools. If they're stressed at 80%, I want to know what number they're stressed at.
Some of that is driven by the particular student body or what have at school. If we have to have 2 CDC classrooms instead of 1.
Mm-hmm.
If we have a larger ESL, English as a second language group, there are different factors, K through 12, that will determine. We have some pre-K students in here too. We have those programs in some schools. So
there's not a blanket
we
application.
can't give a blanket number until you look at the composition of the students. You may have to have pull-outs for fairly small groups of students. That's where we wind up using odd spaces where initially we had this classroom was going to be for that. Well, as we get crowded, that classroom becomes a regular first grade or whatever, and we go to the alternate spaces for some of those pull-outs. So it's a very nebulous number.
Okay. The other question I had is on the school zoning for Stewart's Creek High School. We talked about this a little bit initially when Mr. Gill was here, I think, meeting before last, and he said that you all had done some preliminary projections to try to balance out the socioeconomic distribution of students. I'd love to see, even preliminarily, what the work you've done on the zoning looks like, because that's going to have a direct impact on Smyrna and Laverne, and so I want to see what that's going to look like.
Yes,
And then the other question I had, and this is my last one, is, and I know this is an area that I don't feel like it directly falls under the authority of the commission. It may not fall under it at all, but we get the phone calls when we hear the public comments, and I'd love for you to keep us apprised of what's going on with the wrestling club.
I think I think the school board has basically just said that if they'd fill the paperwork out that everyone else fills out, then they're welcome to come in and use it, with the exception of 6 hours a week at Blackman High School. And I think that the board will stand by that. All they got to do is come in and fill the paperwork out and give us a certificate of insurance, and we'll schedule them in here.
So I just want to, I'm saying this in large part for the public's benefit too. So the accusation that basically we shut down the wrestling program is not accurate. Okay. That was my understanding as well.
Not accurate. If the paperwork's filled out, they could be wrestling tonight.
Okay.
Mr. Jordan?
Back to the school situation, I would just like to point out that this $153.5 million over the next 4 to 5 years is a huge number. If you look at the last 5 years, we've spent the same kind of money. You know, we've opened, I'm thinking 5 schools off the top of my head we've opened in the last few years. So if you look, you know, I know some of you new commissioners are always thinking these are huge numbers. Well, welcome to the county.
To the big league.
There are huge numbers, and I don't know if I can support all this. I definitely want to have a lot of discussion about an elementary school in the future and hopefully see some zoning, but this isn't new stuff.
I think
A high school is painful. They're extremely painful. So and it's been a few years since we've done a high school, but it's.
I think we've opened 7 in the last 6 years.
Yeah.
7 schools.
The square footage figures, what kind of square footage figures do you use for?
For the high school?
Yeah, or just for any of them?
Normally, we've been building for a middle school 160,000 square feet, elementary school 130, and the high school is at 300 to 350,000 square feet.
So that's the figure that you used?
Yes.
I've got a question, Commissioner, or Chairman, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Just out of curiosity, and Mr. Clark, you might not be able to answer this, with the Laverne and Smyrna bleachers, what was the priority given to those over in elementary front line and office being the front line of their security? Am I misunderstanding what the David Urey project is in the Laverne High School? And the reason I'm asking that, obviously, we've been made aware of the Stewart's Creek incident with a sex offender that was caught entering the book fair with the Raptor system that they happen to have implemented over there. And I've got a special needs daughter that goes to that school, and thankfully those employees were extremely aware of what was going on. They caught someone that was in trouble in Ohio for trying to rape a 9-year-old child. I'm just looking for some justification of why bleachers are more important than having an office at the front of the school where everyone would have to enter that before they have access to the campus. And if you didn't make that determination of when those projects would be done, I understand that, but I don't know if the board made that decision, but that, to me, that's a huge, and Commissioner Allen's right, I've been to Smyrna football games. I know that the bleachers get packed there, but to me, I'd have a hard time justifying voting for bleachers and funding for bleachers over funding for an office for an elementary school with the most smallest of our society that are going to be targeted by some deviant.
Right now, we went through all of these schools over the past 3 years, I guess, and put in automatic door locks on the front door and speaker systems, and secured everything, every school building in the county as someone up until that point, you could walk up to the front door and walk in.
Right.
All of them are working well at this point. All of them are working well. Because if you go up to the front door, you have to get, permission to come into the building, basically. We replaced that gym floor in there, and we've done quite a bit of work on that building over the years. And so I don't know if it's more important or not than the bleachers. I think they're both probably equally important. So, I might recommend moving it up with the bleachers.
Well, to that point, I would be a whole lot more open to voting for that than I would be for the bleachers, just from, I know the scene that caused at Stewart's Creek. And even I know this is off subject a little bit, Mr. Chairman, if I drift too far off, please correct me. I'd be interested in finding out more about that Raptor funding, because I know that Mr. Gill several years ago allowed Stewart's Creek to kind of guinea pig that. And if it just stops one from coming in there, then it's worth it to me. And there's no telling, where else that kind of situation might come up. And if put in an office or in a particular place on campus is going to help prevent something like that, or is going to protect the school and the students in there, then I would look at that before I would look at football bleachers. Thank you.
Well put. And obviously, Commissioner, when we get to a voting situation, whatever the motion is can always be amended to reflect that very thing. I'm not suggesting you do that or not do that.
No, I
agree with it. But I will say this: when I toured that school, that was the only thing that principal said he needed. That was the only thing that they were dissatisfied with, was the inconvenience. Let's put it that way. It's secure. It's just the inconvenience of having to do quite a bit of work just to get somebody in and out of the building.
Is there a camera at that door where they can see who it is?
Yes.
Jeff, I appreciate you raising that, Commissioner. Our board has been completely and totally concerned about the safety of all of our schools. And as Mr. Flaherty said, over the last few years, we've made sure that in every school, now you can't just walk in. You've got to either go through the office in our newer schools, or we've installed this camera buzzer system. So it's not that David Urey doesn't already have that, it does. It's just from the school standpoint, not ideal. It's not very convenient. Is it a security risk? Well, no, we don't think so. I mean, at least we've made it as safe as we can with that architecture. The bleachers, we're not doing that for the convenience of visitors coming to the games. We think it's not a good idea to have thousands of people standing in a heightened state of emotionality, if that's a word, at a football game, and the likelihood of that erupting into some sort of a brawl. So we saw that as a security issue too.
Well, and that's good, and that's kind of what I was looking for, was confirmation. Was, to me, the student safety is number one above anything else. And appreciate the fact that we believe it's secure, but if there's always a way for us to make it one more step secure, then I'm absolutely wanting us to look at that, just to be responsible to our citizens.
Commissioner Jordan?
I didn't mean to cut him
No,
off
you
by any
didn't.
means, but Eagleville. We talked about Eagleville during the previous commission. We voted in concept, I believe, to move forward with something, but we haven't spent any money at this point in time. I don't believe we've spent any design money or anything. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. I don't feel like a previous commission can handcuff a current commission to have to do that project at a certain time. So we've got to bring that back up and basically start from scratch with that, correct? Because it may well land on the same time frame as Stewart's Creek High School, or it might just not. Is that not correct, or am I missing?
No, sir, I think you're quite right on that. By reading this, the school board, and maybe Chairman Burns wants to comment on this or not, or any of you for that matter, has really essentially moved this up at the same priority one level as, and I think that's probably where it belongs, but that's what you've chosen to do at this point anyway, with bleachers and with the Stewart's Creek High School. And Commissioner Jordan is exactly right. I've got a copy of it here, and the motion which passed unanimously was that we proceed with Phase 1 at Eagleville High School, including classrooms and so forth, the auditorium renovation, the cafeteria at a cost of approximately $5.3 million, and forward to the Budget Committee for funding when the county goes to the bond market approximately April 2011. That's what passed.
But in reality, that actually isn't anything.
That's correct.
Yeah.
It is and it isn't. You're right. It is and it isn't. And I took this to mean that we equated these things. This is what you wanted funded whenever we vote, and we can amend or add or subtract or whatever at that point.
One observation, the Eagleville addition design would not have to start until about this time next year, just designed to keep it in track with the high school.
Ms. Nolan has been exercising one of her many great qualities of tremendous patience, and particularly with me. And she has some information about funding and refunding and moving and so forth. So if there are just no other pressing questions from these three gentlemen, I'll just thank. If you all want to stay right here or move back to your regular seat, that'll be all right. Mayor, would you like to come up and
Yeah, well,
I'll come up and support
I was going to say there might be.
I'm with her on this. She's
let's not be challenging Ms. Nolan on the numbers. I don't recommend that.
I'd like to say, Chairman Barnes, you know, your comment, you don't want to give out information. And sometimes I feel that way. I mean, it's hard to project.
Yeah.
You know, it's easy to say with 85% confidence what's going to happen next year. But then when you start moving out, you know, you get less confident. But this process of what the school board went through and what I'm getting ready to go through, to me is good financial planning, good financial management, is that it gives us a sense. They've told you as they were going through, what did they use for their assumptions? What are their growth rate? And Commissioner Phillips pointed out, well, the last 3 years is not as high as what they used in their projections. Well, okay, if the next year comes in better, meaning not as high, then we'll know, well, maybe, you know, then you have that sense, well, we know if it was 2.87, what was going to happen. If it's less than that, well, you might have some relief. If it's more than that, oh my goodness, then some of these things might be sooner than later. It just, to me, it just gives us a sense of what may happen. Not that what they say, this is absolutely 100% what's going to happen. And when we talk about what I'm getting ready to talk about, I'm telling you, I have assumptions in mine too. I try to give you those assumptions so again that you can look at it and go, oh, well, that didn't happen. Things might not be as bad. Or, oh my gosh, we knew what she used and she was off target. So I say that to lead into my assumptions. Now, as the school board presented when they thought that they would need those particular schools, well, rule of thumb was high schools you need about 2 years to build, middle and elementary 1 year. And on my assumptions, I used, on the additions, I also used 1 year. I figured you could get it done in a year, regardless of what it was. So, no pressure. Okay. It's a 2-year project on the school, and I kind of want to stay up on the top part. And when we talk about elementary schools, when we, initially when we first talked this afternoon about making sure elementary money is separate from the high school money. Whenever we build elementary schools, we have to share with the city of Murfreesboro based on the ADA, average daily attendance. For this 24.7 million elementary school, we'll need to borrow almost $4.5 million more to turn over to the city of Murfreesboro. Not that we like it, but that's just the rules we go by. So that's why when we say we want to keep if we've borrowed for an elementary purpose, we want to keep those separate because we've already had to borrow extra money and are paying the debt on it. Of course, the county is servicing the debt for this amount that we turn over to the city. We don't have to do that for the high schools. For the middle schools, because we have a 6th, 7th, and 8th grade structure and the city educates K-6, we have to share on 1/3 of the cost of the middle school. Okay, so we'll...
Just one clarification, Lisa, that money that's shared with that special school district, are they restricted as to how they can use it? Do they have to use it for capital or can they use it for operating expenses?
I'm not quite sure if they have to use it for, but they have. They've used it for improvements on their schools or to pay debt.
So they could use it like for maintenance and to renovate and to put a new roof on and those kinds of things?
Yes.
We only have the county school district and the Murfreesboro school district, and that's why we have to share with them. Now, if we had another school district, we'd have to share with the other school district.
Right, and it's based on where the kids are.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I knew that maybe some didn't know that, but we only have the 2 school districts.
Just the 2 schools.
That's enough.
Smyrna and Laverne don't have their own school system. Okay, so, in putting this out and for y'all to ask, what is it going to happen to debt service? What's going to happen to the other ones? That's why we needed to have a sense of, well, what would be coming after the high school? What's coming in later? The mayor and I both have expressed with the refunding that we just did and with the refunding coming up, we're hoping that we could, and right now we're pretty good, that if all we had to build was a middle school, a high school, that we probably could take care of it in debt service. Okay, so that's what I'm gonna kind of walk us through. On this top part, that Stewart's Creek High School is estimated at 49.9. I'm estimating that come spring, summer, that's where we would do our first borrowing, we'd borrow $27 million of it, and then follow up the following year to borrow the balance. Not borrow it all at once, since we're not going to be paying it out all at once. We should try to structure a high school over 2 years on the borrowing. So that's all that we would have. Now, I apologize. I was hoping that there would be, you don't see the bleachers on this. I was hoping it could be funded out of the major capital projects. I know that we've got a floating $1 million, okay? Just throw that out. Okay. But along with what happens at in this county, it's not just the schools that you will have to deal with as commissioners, but those things that we have on the county side. We have some commitments on road projects. I've put a 1.5 million across the next 4 years. I know the project that we've got on tap will need about 2 million, more than 2 million that we have not funded yet. Also, I show in the general part some projects that have been on our 5-year plan. They tend to keep being moved out. One being a law enforcement building, a parking garage, and the Justice Center. I've listed those. Estimate of the garage about 10 million, road projects around 6 million, law enforcement building around 10, and the Justice Center, which is probably, I don't know if that's under
50 to 60 million.
Okay, well, I've got 46, so that would have to be adjusted. All right, so you can see where I've got, so the 2 years for it to open fall 13, we'll begin borrowing sometime spring, summer for that high school. If we were to do these other ones, I'm showing a 33.5 million potential borrowing for this summer. The next summer, 34.7. So you follow up where they needed it. I start about 2 years before on the high school and 1 year for the elementary middle. With this scenario, and all things can change, I would say that spring, summer, 14, that would be the 13-14 year, would be the scary year. That's if you were going to address the Justice Center, the parking garage, an elementary and a middle, all in 1 year.
And you built the law enforcement building already.
And you built that one already. So again, it just gives you a sense to keep in front of you those projects that are on the burner, the back burner. And that's kind of what I view the elementary schools and the other ones. They're out there, there's a potential, but until it comes to you and you make the vote, it's just there for you to review. Okay, so now I will tell you how I got to my some of my projections. On this page 2, and I've given you the support behind it. On our total estimated requirement, that is our current debt service requirement. I'm assuming we're going to refinance these 2 notes that we have outstanding. One's 10 million, one is 21 million. That's the next column. Number 2, the expenditures. Those are expenses that we have in debt service, which would be recurring, the trustees commission, just some debt service payments for paying agents and those type of things. That's what is in number 2. So based on our current debt load, we go to column 3 is what our projections of what we would need to pay out each of the years based on our scheduled debt. Number 4 is our projected revenues, and that's column 4. That also goes to page 4. You jump to page 4, anywhere that you see a star that builds the estimated revenue is an assumption. Assumption of the growth factor on the property tax, or assumption on development tax, interest, and other revenue. So again, we have lots of data. They're conservative estimates, and for instance, 1/2 of the development tax, will it always be $1 million or 1.2 million? And we were receiving 7 million at one time. So any of those years, the development tax is better. My schedule gets better. Okay, so then back to page 2. The one headed up as 5 is, well, how much does our revenue exceed or are less than our estimated expenditures for debt service? You can see in this first year we're going to go into our fund balance. But next year some of the debt starts coming off where you have an excess of about $580,000. Using the assumption that the debt you borrow is at 4.25% over 20 years. For every $1 million of debt, it will cost the county $75,250 to service the debt. So 579,000, if you had that capacity, that would service 7.7 million of additional debt. That next year, you have another increase over top of the 579 of 1.3. So in that second year, which would be the year 12-11, with all these assumptions, 18.24 million. And then the third year, 47.24. So in those 3 years, we could service up to $73 million worth of new debt. That's why we're going back. Now this reflects the refunding that we did already. We're expecting to do another one in December, perhaps, that we could potentially save another $4 million or so, and schedule those within the next, probably that 12-13 and 13-14 year to give us some more relief there. That's why we say, looking at this, that's why we're saying that we probably, in the short term, would be able to absorb that $50 million with the funds that are there now. But if you start adding, then you might potentially have some issues in debt service.
That gets your high school, but doesn't get those 2 elementary or the middle school that are all on that chart.
Right, or the, law enforcement.
Or any of the other
building,
stuff.
Or the other stuff. That's
Yeah.
kind of what I was hesitant to just say, it's not just the high school that you've got before you. You've got the other needs of the county, and then you've got the other things coming in behind you. And for the school's sake, too, is that they put before you what they think is coming, that you can't come back to them and say, well, I've never heard about this high school or this elementary school. So, well, yeah, it was in our 5-year plan.
So we'd have to generate an additional 150 million to get to that 225, that
Yes.
borrowing number?
Oh, yeah, yes.
We have been talking about all these projects the entire time I've been a commissioner, and none of them have been funded. So the judicial building and the parking garage, in my opinion, are still a long ways out on the horizon.
And they tend to.
Our property management chairperson has put the judicial building on his agenda to start the discussion again, but anyway.
Good luck to him.
But she's put that out several years out, just like we put those the other elementary schools a few years out as well, so. But again, if you want to look at the whole picture, that's what she's giving you here, some information to show you a scenario. If all this happened, we wouldn't have enough debt service to accommodate all of it. We would have to find additional sources of revenue, and you know what that source is.
And that's not what, excuse me, Ms. Cook, that's not what either Ms. Nolan was referring to earlier. She, just for the public to know, she used the term property tax growth, and she meant as the value of the property increases and the
Yes.
rate remains the same. She's not anticipating anything with the property tax whatsoever. Just thought I'd say that for the public's
Thank you for
benefit.
that clarification. That is what I meant.
Yes, well, that's really what you said. That's correct. Ms. Cook?
I just wish it was somewhere that we could start this is not heard of in government, a savings account for some of these and start working towards putting some money aside and working towards that.
Well, we've had a savings account. County General had a savings account. We've used all that up in 4 years. I mean, we pushed it all the way down to our 15% limit. You had several $1 million, maybe 15 million plus, that we've had to use out of our savings account because of what's happened in the
Because
economy.
of the economy.
Right. You have a little bit of a savings account in your debt service reserve. That's why these numbers look as favorable as they do now. And with the addition of being able to do this refunding, it's increased your savings account in your debt service reserve. That's why we have this ability to probably handle, as she said, this high school.
The community didn't like us having money in rainy day funds.
That's true.
Because they said we were taxing the people when there was money sitting there, and we have consciously used some of that money up to lessen the tax burden on the people. So some people say save money, some people say, hey, you're taking my money, you're just pigeonholing it, you shouldn't do that. So, it's hard to know exactly what the best approach is.
Ms. Nolan and I discussed this perhaps 3 months ago, and I was just exploring it. I was just asking her a question with the nickel that we put aside for renovations, which is something that has worked very, very well, served the county well. Dr. Bullen, I think, his idea years ago, that perhaps we could consider, I was just exploring this with her, consider doing that very thing, and at the end of a certain period of time, then we would have this amount of money in this fund to pay for a school, virtually pay cash for it at that time, and save us a good deal of money. Well, we discussed this back and forth, and the problem is just exactly what you just said. We take that money out of circulation, and we tax the people for it and don't use it. And that's where the conversation stopped. You weren't necessarily for it or against it. And I wasn't either. We were just discussing it. And it sounds like one of those things, you know, you save up and buy a new car, it's going to be a lot cheaper on you. No question about that. But can you afford to do without that money in the meantime? And the answer appears to be no. We can't. I don't know, though. I don't know.
Well, Ms. Nolan said also, the optimistic side of it, I guess, that these are all conservative numbers, that growth could just skyrocket and lower some of what we'd be responsible for. And so
That'll also accelerate the schedule as far as when the
Yeah,
schools are meeting.
That's what,
Little
that's
give
why
and
you
take.
just kind of
Yeah.
always have to know
Yeah.
that what
Right.
happens for a reaction. There's the
Yeah.
reaction.
there's a big reaction.
Yeah.
But one thing, and I'll give kudos
true.
to the commission for setting aside the funds to do some of these major projects, that before you did that, we rolled that up into borrowing, and we were borrowing for those things. So at least $2 or $3 million every year, we're doing some pay-as-you-go. We're doing the renovations and paying for it.
We're saving too, because we're not, if we save that money in a way to pay for repairs, we don't have to share that borrowed money.
Oh, yeah, we do.
Huh?
Yes, well, I mean, well, we're
No,
we're
if we
sharing the
don't borrow
property
it,
tax.
if we don't borrow it, we don't have to share it.
Right, but,
And that's what I'm saying, if we got $10 million here that we're doing repairs with, that we have taken out of our tax money, out of our savings money, that we haven't had to share that with, if it's elementary.
but it's property tax dollars for education, and it's shared. So that money that goes into this capital projects that we're taxing, I know it's less than 5 cents, but of that 5 cents,
It's still shared.
it's still shared with the city.
If it's spent grades K through 5.
It doesn't know.
No?
It's property tax, it's shared,
Regardless of where it comes from.
regardless of where it's used. It's shared, just like all property tax for general purpose schools is shared with the city.
The cities have great lobbyists in Nashville.
Boy, they sure do.
Yes.
And a lot.
And, well, my soapbox part of that is that and I'm sure the school board will back me up on this, they educate K-6 and we do K-12. And it's much cheaper to do K-6 than 7-12, but we share the dollars based on where the kids are, not what kind of kid they are.
How long is that, excuse me, how long has that been in place? You said
Forever.
Forever? Seems like it.
Yeah.
Well, and the theory is that the county is charged with education, and it's the city's choice. So any money that the county does, it's for all kids, and it's divided amongst all the kids. And then the cities can just add on top.
And here we are.
It's always hard to.
Yeah, but the city, since we're talking pretty much about Murfreesboro, the city of Murfreesboro, me being one of those, lives in there, pays as much county taxes as you do. So there's some theory there that says, why not, okay? And that's something that when we get into some discussion over these, that folks don't really bear out. Once again, I live in the city of Murfreesboro. And not only do I pay Murfreesboro city taxes, just like you pay Smyrna city taxes, but I pay Rutherford County taxes just like you do too. And if I pay those kinds of taxes, then some of those dollars should be spent on educating my K through 6 kids. So you can look at it several different ways. So us having to share that, sometimes when I have issues with it is, do they need it? Well, no, I don't mind giving it to them if they need it. And a lot of times they're spending it for maintenance types of issues and other types of things. And that's the reason I ask about the capital versus the operating expenses.
I don't mind the sharing. I just wish there was a component on the cost of educating them.
He brought to mind one other thing I wanted to say. This is a plan, we have a 5-year plan. I hope the city of Murfreesboro, I noticed that they had a 5-year or maybe even longer capital improvement plan. I hope at some point they put in that plan another city school. If that does, that will play maybe into what we do in our Blackman quote area school. So that's something else that we'll know over the next couple of years that might have a major impact on how we go forward.
Wasn't there some discussion on that very thing?
There is some discussion, and I'm not sure.
And if I'm not mistaken, it's on the west side of Murfreesboro, probably within blocks of the same school that our school board has put in, and rightfully so.
Right.
We'd like for them to share that information, Mr. Mayor. I'll just say that.
I think we should.
Keep you from saying it.
We should have some real serious discussions with them to see what they're going to actually do. I think we should encourage this discussion.
Mayor, we actually have a meeting, Mr. Gill and I will meet with Dr. Gilbert and Ms. Wade next month. Item number 1 on our agenda will be where we can build a school.
You're not going to build a school close to the city limits.
Talking is good.
That's great.
Do we have questions for Ms. Nolan? You going to refund the first week, second week of December, somewhere in that neighborhood? Hoping, I think you used the term $4 million a few minutes ago.
Oh, that's a hope. Now, again,
Hoping, I said
market
hoping.
conditions.
Understood. Okay.
We asked the question a couple of months ago, I guess it was, when this discussion first started about building this new high school and what the impact of the long-term impact could be. And that's what led us to all of these figures in discussion tonight. And we got that. And the impact just on the high school itself doesn't appear to be a major hit. It's all of the other projects that could come along simultaneous to building that school that could cause us issues as well. So the bottom line is that it doesn't appear to have a major property tax impact if revenues continue to come in, BEP money continues to come in, those type of things, similar to the way it has the last couple of years. So the bottom line is it doesn't seem to be as big an impact as what some of us feared that it could be. And all those things are good, and I think it shows good fiscal management and responsibility on our part, a lot on your work, a lot on the mayor's work, and a lot on the school board's work in putting together that plan. And even though I know it'll change next year, let alone 5 years out from that, and I understand that, but it is something that we, as 4-year commissioners, can kind of at least look at and see what we've got coming over the next 4 years, in addition to this high school and all that work that you put into it and that you put into it is very valuable to me, and I thank you for that.
Are there other questions for, yes?
I don't have a question, I just have a statement I was going to share with the committee. At the legislative review that I attended to, Senator Tracy and Senator Ketron, I asked them both what their intentions were relating to BEP funding, because I know that's a direct impact on us. And, of course, anything can happen when it's time to take a vote, but they said the very first thing that they look at is education and the BEP funding, and it's their desire and their commitment that they will try to fund that wholly as they have in the past, and then look at everything else for cuts. So
they'll be with us steering soon in January. The legislative folks usually come, right, in January?
Historically, January, the steering committee meets in January and has its legislative agenda review.
And that'll be a question that comes up every single year, and I think it's probably needless to say if the BEP money should be cut or whatever, we would have an emergency situation and with funding. I don't think there's any question. about that, and that money would have to be replaced, in my judgment, which may put, depending on the amount, a lot of this on hold, certainly. So that's a critical thing for us to get, and they know that. My goodness, we they have been told numerous times.
Our job is tough, but the state job is really going to be tough.
It is tough.
All of this stimulus money, the one-time money coming in is probably not going to be there. So they're going to have to either look at raising revenues or making cuts, and I think they're going to be looking at making tremendous cuts, and just be interesting to see where that goes.
And just to even follow up on that, if they cut spending, and the spending is the BEP money, it essentially forces us to raise taxes or cut the BEP money somewhere out of our budget. So that's very tough decisions on everybody's part, possibly, if that should happen. Are there other comments for the mayor or Ms. Nolan, or we have all the experts are here? If not, evidently not, I thank both of you, Ms. Nolan particularly, tonight for and I know you and I will be in contact, and we'll see how we want to handle this refunding and whatever, and getting the information to the proper folks. Want to look? Is there anything else that we're okay here? We got everything. December meeting, which is I believe the 28th. This will be my 5th December, and I think I've looked back, and sometimes we meet and sometimes we did not. Schools are out. Mr. Sandvig does not expect any amendments at that time. On the other hand, we could have another discussion with Ms. Nolan perhaps, and have a schools only meeting, or we can wait until January, or I can shut up and we just meet like we normally do. What are the wishes of the committee? We have a lot of information, I know, to digest, and whether we want to vote on any of this material in January or not, but we're getting to, where we need to be at least thinking about it.
Let me ask Ms. Nolan, what is your best estimate on when we will actually have to have approval on what we're going to need to borrow the money for to issue the bonds about when? In other words, we got to go through here, we got to go to budget, and we got to go to the market. So what month do they need to be focused on?
I'll back up over to them. When do you anticipate letting contract?
The contract would have to go in probably April or May.
To let the contract?
Yeah, in May.
In May? So,
we need the money, so we could let the
well, you need the commitment.
Yeah.
You need the commitment that they will borrow.
Before May?
Yeah, right.
Or in May?
With the holidays, they aren't going to be prepared to come forward in December and ask for the money at that point in time.
No.
If they need the commitment from y'all, at least by May, that you're going to commit, and then we may go in June, because they probably won't get a bill. Probably won't get a bill until.
Yeah, we can go ahead and bid the thing, and then, of course, we let it after we bid it.
When would you need to send it?
The interest sometimes, if the funds are not approved to bid, or if it's a little bit lacking, which kind of runs the cost of it up some because it's not as many bidders sometimes.
Well, being all that to say, there's more than ample time. I mean, a December meeting is not critical. Maybe not even a January meeting is critical to the time frame that we're going to need to get this money borrowed and funded. So that's the only reason I asked that question.
I don't want to be put in a situation, this committee, of course, nothing is going to happen on this until we vote something up. All right, and then it's got to go to budget. So, and I don't want to put the budget committee in a situation where they have to look at it that one night and vote. I mean, we haven't done that. Right. And I'd like to give them, let's just say we voted in January and something on this list passed. Let's just say it did. Then it'd go to budget in February, and the commission, and then with the commission in February. Well, I think the budget committee should have a longer time to look at it than just one meeting.
Well, that's what I was going to suggest is at our December meeting, I can just present this. At least, not that they have any vote on it, but just like as we did y'all.
The December budget meeting? Okay.
Just, this is, I mean, we already did that once already.
Mhm.
I won't have done the refunding by the December meeting.
And
But
I-
they've already kind of gone through this that I went with you. We did that last month.
Just a suggestion, I think that timeline makes more sense if we brought this up in January. Budget could already be taking a look at it.
So they've got this package, but not this one. That was the update from the school board. So I can give them this information.
The timeline makes a little bit of sense to me, and considering the December meeting, that's a holiday week.
It is.
Schools are out, and a lot of people are out of town, myself included, so I won't be here for that meeting if we have one. So I don't know if that influences anyone else, if everybody else is going to be here and there's business to be conducted.
Most of the staff members will probably be on vacation too and things like that.
Sandy, are we okay on December? You're okay with that? You told me that you thought you were. If we have some emergency situation or whatever, we can always call a meeting. If there's nothing else on that, then we will not meet in December. And please say something if you think that's a bad idea. If not, we will not meet on December 28th. We'll meet in January. One bit of new business, I just want to bring this up, and that is that, Commissioner Jordan reminded me the other night about board member Terry Hodge and his recent honor. He's been, I don't even know what this means. It sounds really good, but he's been honored with a level 5, a school board member by the Tennessee School Board Association. And he is the only school board member. This is hard to believe, really, the outstanding people we have there now and have had in the past. But he has received that honor, and that is absolutely terrific. And I wanted to get that in front of this committee. The school board mentioned it the other night, so I'm mentioning it now. Any other new business or points of discussion? If not, we don't have anything to vote on. We're in good shape, Commissioner Sheldon. All right. We are adjourned.